Candela Obscura, a candle in the darkness, will light the way. Creatures with long limbs that run in the night, their legs are whittled from their endless pace. A man who tears his face away to reveal the void, and the void takes him, a voice that only you can hear. It promises a better life. All you have to do is listen. Monsters escape the flare and corrupt the world with bleed, tearing lives apart and completing other goals. Candela Obscura, we are the candle in the darkness, the only thing that stands between this world and whatever lies beyond. Hello, you may call me Mr. Ware, both Dungeon Master and player, and newly appointed Lightkeeper. My goal is to create material for both Lightkeepers and players, as well as expand upon the systems already within Candela Obscura. I hope you join me on this journey as we create new monsters, weapons, quests, and worlds for you to use. Today, I wish to cover a new weapon system and monster stat sheet. Combat rules. In combat, the Lightkeeper will decide which party will take their turns first, either the monsters or the players. When the monsters take their turns, a monster will resolve a set amount of actions, and when all the monsters have resolved their actions, the players will then go. Each player can resolve one action. After each player has resolved an action, the monsters will then go again until they resolved all their actions, and it's the player's turn, going back and forth until the combat is over. Weapon rules. To attack with the weapon, a player must use one action that correlates to the weapon. So, for example, the sword uses strike, the gun uses control, the pendulum uses sway. On these actions, you can use drive to gain extra dice, and gilded dice as well to gain drive back. However, you cannot use resistance. Each player can only take one weapon per mission. Mid-mission, you can swap with another willing player as an action. Depending on the outcome of your roll on your weapon action will change the result. So a failure will usually mean a miss, causing nothing to happen. A mixed success will usually have a beneficial effect, but will not deal marks. A full success will deal marks to the monster, and a critical success will usually cause you to have both the results of the full success and the mixed success. After resolving the weapon action, the weapon will then put you in one of two ranged categories, either melee or ranged from the monster you just attacked. This will correlate to certain abilities the monsters use. Going over the weapons, starting with the nerve weapons. The first being the sword, the trusty slayer of monsters. This weapon scales off of strike, so you'll roll a strike action. If the result is a failure, there will be a miss, causing nothing to happen. If the result is mixed, you will use the ability Repose, where you will roll an additional strike action. If there are any sixes in the dice pool, you will deal one body mark. On a full result, you will deal two body marks. And on a critical result, you deal two body marks and use the ability Repose. Bang bang, the gun. This weapon scales with control. On a failure result, you miss and nothing happens. On a mixed, you will call the weak point. During the next attack action against the monster, the attacker may reroll 1d6. On a full result, deal 1 body mark to the monster, and a critical result will deal 1 body mark to the monster and allow you to call a weak point. Moving on to the cunning weapons. You are becoming very sleepy. The pendulum, which uses the sway action. On a failure, nothing happens. On a mixed, you cause the monster to sleep, dealing 1 less mark on its next attack. On a full, deal 1 brain mark, and a critical deals 1 brain mark and causes the monster to sleep. A candle sits in the lantern, illuminating the area around you. The lantern, which uses the hide action. On a failure, nothing happens. On a mixed, you use holy light, blinding the monster. On a full, deal 1 brain mark, and a critical, deal 1 brain mark, and blind the monster with holy light. Moving on to intuition weapons. Harnessing the power of bleed, the staff, which uses the sense action. On a failure, you lose energy, taking 1 bleed mark. On a mixed, you absorb energy, recovering 1 bleed mark. On a full, you deal 2 bleed marks. And on a critical, you deal 2 bleed marks and cause the monster to stagger backwards. The crystal, which can contain a piece of the monster's bleed. It uses the focus action. Failure, causing nothing to happen. Mixed, you store bleed, siphoning some of the monster's energy into the crystal. You can then release it on a following mixed result, dealing 1 mark of the monster's highest resistance. If the resistances are tied, bleed will take priority. And if it's tied between brain and body, brain will take priority. On a full, you deal 1 bleed mark. And a critical, you deal 1 bleed mark and store bleed from the monster. And those are the current weapons. Note, there are no weapons for move, read, and survey, and that covers the weapons. Moving on to the monster sheets. Each monster will have an intro introducing them, a description telling you what they are, example strategies in combat, and example quest points. Monsters will then have a name and a toughness. A toughness is how much damage a monster can take before they are knocked unconscious or killed. Then there are marks. Marks are broken up into 3 categories: body, brain, and bleed. When a monster takes marks from a player, you will then fill in these boxes. And whenever the boxes in a row are completely filled, the monster will then take 1 damage to its toughness. Under that, the monster will have abilities. Monster abilities will have a player make an action to avoid them. Monsters can use multiple abilities per turn. It will be described here, and then it'll also have a chart with each ability and what they do for easy organization. Under that, you'll have the passives. Passives are always in effect for a monster. Now, moving down to an example. The guard. So an intro. You see a guard step out for a smoke break. The building should be abandoned. What could he be protecting? Then his description. A large individual with armor and a club. Despite having the title of guard, they are little more than a thug. Example strategy: combat. In combat, guards are fodder and will rush enemies while something else deals damage. Example quest points: putting a guard outside a building will signify to the players that someone doesn't want them to go there. So obviously, they'll go there. The guard has a toughness of 2, has 3 body marks, 2 brain marks, and 1 bleed mark. Their abilities are club, which it can use once per turn. Club: the guard swings a club at a player. The player must make a full success or take 1 body mark, which can be read here and is also shown on the chart, with club, critical, dodging it, full, dodging it, mixed, taking 1 body mark, and failure, taking 1 body mark. Moving on to its passives, the passive is stop. If a player moves away from the guard clubs the player. That is an example sheet. As an example combat, if the players deal 1 body mark, 1 brain mark, and 1 bleed mark to the guards, once the guard takes that 1 bleed mark, you would immediately erase the bleed, leaving him with no bleed marks, and he would take 1 damage to his toughness, leaving him with 1 toughness, but still having 1 body mark and 1 brain mark. On the subsequent turn, if the player is then dealt 1 body mark, it would then be the guard's turn, where he would use his ability club, where he would go to a player and then swinging his club, potentially dealing 1 body mark. That would then end the guard's turn, so ending the monster's turn, giving it back to the players. Now the guard already has 1 body mark and 1 brain mark, so the players deal 1 body mark, the guard will still be up. Now if they deal a 3rd body mark, he will then take 1 more damage to his toughness, bringing his total toughness to 0, which will either incapacitate or kill the guard. And that is monster stat sheets. In subsequent videos, I will go over 3 monsters that I've created. The first being the Nightwalker. The second being the Void. And the third being the Voice. I am very excited to be working on homebrew for Candela Obscura. Keep an eye out for my future videos. I plan to release 1 video a week, with Sunday being the latest. The goal of the channel is to give Critical Role's new system, Candela Obscura, the love and passion a new tabletop role-playing game deserves, by making content for you to use and run. Any feedback is more than welcome. My email will be in the description if you'd like to reach out and contact me. Thank you all for watching till the end. A candle in the darkness will light the way.